Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our study session for Tuesday, December 12th. Thank you for being here. Couple changes, just so everybody's aware. Our first item of business this afternoon is going to be A7. So we're going to go to that first, and then A3 and A4 are going to be tabled, but we'll have a discussion about that here in just a few moments. So A7 is discuss proposed amendments to the city charter and consider if amendments will move forward to the May 4th, 2024 election.
Hello, Mayor, Council, Aaron Flores, Deputy Director of Administrative Services, Deputy City Secretary. And today we are going to be talking about the proposed charter amendments. As you guys know, the Charter Review Committee just recently wrapped up their review of the city charter, and they made their recommendations. So we are going to go through those items with the intention that hopefully we can walk away knowing what the council wishes to move forward with. And that way we can continue on the process. So here's just a little timeline. In November, the Charter Review Committee presented their final report to the council. In January, the city attorney will write the ballot language for the charter amendments. And then in February, there will be an ordinance brought forward calling the special election. So my thoughts with these is we could just go through them one at a time. You guys can ask any questions you might have and deliberate, and then make a determination, yes or no, going forward. And we'll start with this first one. This is Section 108, related to eminent domain. So the Charter Review Committee recommended that the word eminent domain be used consistently throughout this section. And they also suggested adding the term fee simple and deleting the word any related to any condemnation. You guys are free to discuss.
Okay.
Let me also throw in a comment. In this, the proposed language that the committee recommended also greatly simplifies the language of this section, largely by basically, rather than having a huge laundry list that's currently in the charter of the different kind of things that you use in the domain for, largely just for purposes of essentially saying you can use eminent domain for any public purpose that's allowed under the state constitution and federal law. So it kind of creates a more global, that way we don't actually miss something. If for some reason it's not in that laundry list, then the charter would then now allow us, basically the city to use eminent domain for any purpose for which it's allowed under the law.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Council, any discussion on this first item?
No concerns.
Everybody okay with that? Okay.
Okay, wonderful. So the second one is going to be the committee recommended to implement a stipend for the mayor and council, $200 a month for council members and $400 a month for the mayor.
Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns on that?
Okay, so we're going to move forward with that one.
Keep moving.
Section 2.14, the committee recommended removing language related to abstaining as a yes vote. So basically, abstaining would qualify as a null vote.
Kevin, you have a comment?
No, the only comment, kind of editorial comment I'd make about this one is it's very unusual for any situation where abstaining would actually be an affirmative vote. This is about the only time I've seen it. Most parliamentary procedure, if you don't vote, essentially, if there needs to be a vote, then it would be accounted as a negative vote. This does have some implications because essentially, if anything that would require an affirmative vote by the majority, voting on a motion. Essentially, if you don't vote, then obviously that's not an affirmative vote for it, for the motion. So ultimately, this change puts the charter in line with what most parliamentary procedure or meeting procedures would call for a vote.
However, let me ask you this.
Yes.
So with a 5-member council, and if somebody were to abstain, then does that make the mayor a deciding vote,
Ah,
because you are neither casting a vote for or against if you abstain under this new change, and we need to get business done. So if it was a 2-2 split, then our rules say mayor can vote
mayor would vote.
in a tie.
That's the way this would work. That would effectively create that kind of scenario. Yes, sir.
Um, you know, I sort of wrestled with this because council members were elected to vote, not to abstain. And I think in 6 years when I was on council, we may have only had 3 times when the mayor ever voted. It's a rarity, to say the least. And so I've just,
And there are
Curious.
other city charters that actually expressly state, thou shalt not abstain. I mean, in so many words. So, about the only way you can avoid voting would be to actually, either be absent from the meeting or be conflicted, have a conflict of law, under law, where under Chapter 7171, your code of ethics, you couldn't vote on a matter. Otherwise, everybody had to vote under certain charters. And so we don't have that similar provision in Farmers Branch. This is the one we have regarding voting. So,
okay. Any other questions, comments? I mean, I'm fine with that, but I just want everybody to know what they're in for.
Yeah, Mayor, I wrestled with this one myself as well for the same reasons. An abstention on council, to me, is sort of stepping aside from your duty, responsibilities as a council member, represent your constituents. As you said, we were elected to vote and represent our constituents, and I would see it as a council member's duty to try to understand their constituents' position. If the council member was feeling like they're going to vote abstain on a certain matter. So I'm curious on this one, Kevin, because you mentioned it, that there are other charters that actually require a yes or no vote, and there's no option to abstain. Is that a prevalent, or you've just seen it in a couple of other charters? Or?
I've seen it. I've never, I've not done a big survey of a lot of charters to say whether or not I can say it's prevalent, but I have seen it in multiple charters where it is a requirement to vote unless there's a conflict, an actual legal conflict.
Okay. I mean, I feel like under today's charter, to abstain, knowing that that is an automatic yes vote, allows you to send a message, but knowing that that's going to end up being a yes vote. If we don't have an abstain option where it's just simply abstain, it's not yes or no. There's not the ability to send a message and that be a default vote. You either have to stand on yes or no. But again, we're responsible for representing our constituents, and that requires a vote. And in my mind, not an abstention, regardless of its definition.
So up till now, an abstention has counted as a yes vote,
Right.
which precludes the mayor from voting in the event that we have 5 members present.
Right.
Okay. So, again, sans somebody being sick or out of town, I think the times that this may come to bear would be very few and far between. But nevertheless, we need to know that it does. Well, I'll say it a different way. It might give somebody pause to reconsider their abstention if they know that the mayor is going to have a vote.
True.
So,
Yeah, I mean, that's true. And so, again, this is one that can go any way the council desires it to go. As I said, it's kind of unusual to actually designate it being a yes vote when one abstains. But because again, procedurally, that's usually not what happens. Because if you were to just, if you would be absent, it wouldn't be counted as an abstention. It'd be counted as a vote, and you wouldn't count it, yes, it more or less be treated as a vote against, because there's no one voting, because you're not there to vote for it.
Councilman Mayor.
So Kevin, it appears that the committee put together a recommendation to remove the language related to abstaining being treated as a yes vote. I'm also hearing the possibility that the council maybe even working towards removing the abstention possibility would clarify that. So it seems to me we might be able to get the best of both worlds to allow the abstention to be removed, because that's the committee's language here, removal of the abstention being a yes. Let's just see if we could work towards taking it out. And I'm proposing that.
Well, are you proposing that, or are you proposing, do I hear you proposing actually as express prohibition of abstaining?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
The prohibition of abstaining to allow for a yes or no vote. And
Okay.
we've heard other perspectives here. And again, I think it lends to the committee's action item here to remove the abstention be related to being a yes vote. And so therefore, if you take it away, you've also still allowed recusal to be a method that you have a conflict.
Right.
And then at least I've heard one other method or one other member suggest that we should vote. And I believe the mayor said the same, that we should be voting. And I would agree with that. And so therefore, it seems like we clear that up with removing the ability, creating a prohibition, as you just said, of abstention.
Okay.
Is there some
Well, one thing
legal
it does-
reference you could provide here?
Well, no, the only one thing it does, of course, resolve the very thing that the mayor brought up would be if you prohibited abstention, then the only time the mayor would be voting in case of a tie would be when there is truly either an absence, either because somebody's not present at the meeting or because of a legal conflict amongst one of the other council members. So, it resolves that legal question, if you will, if you did that.
Right.
So that everybody present does have to vote, save and except the conflict situation.
Correct.
So I don't know. I mean, again, that's.
I don't know. I'm sort of torn on that one, only because I could understand somebody, and I'm reaching for extremes.
We all have to pontificate
Yeah.
at this particular moment.
Somebody
Agreed.
not voting on something because of religious grounds, or that's an extreme, but nevertheless, it could
Can happen. Certainly.
be a scenario.
Right.
So I would say to force or compel somebody to vote in that regard, that's not what I'm looking for. But I would think that, okay, yes, you can abstain, but in a 5-member council, depending how votes fall, your vote could be decided by the mayor.
Yeah, well,
And
but we have that already. so
which,
that's-
yes,
That's not new.
no, but under what you're saying is
Correct.
you really need to leave the room or not even show, because that's the only way. Otherwise, you'd have to vote.
Is this, are we making more than there is here? I'm fine with changing it from its current status to just having an abstention vote as a possibility. What if what if something's up for a vote and I go out and talk to 100 people and residents in my district and it comes back 50-50, exactly 50-50?
You're
Why
elected
can't
to
I
make
do,
decisions.
why
for them.
can't I abstain? And as far as having to be here, if somebody felt strongly about it and they don't have an abstention, they just walk out to their car for half an hour or something. They're not here, the vote goes on, they come back. I mean, I know that's kind of ridiculous extremes,
But it happens.
but we're-
And I'll just be,
but-
it
yeah, but
happens.
we're-
People do that.
we're picking nits or whatever here. And I don't think it's going to make that big a difference. I do think there should be an abstention, but I don't think it should be an automatic yes. That's just where I come down from on it.
I agree with David. I mean, with all of you actually, but we did, Councilman Jackson and I did abstain earlier this year, and it was to send a message.
So
You
did I.
know, yeah, and so I think I like the fact that it should be clear, especially to the resident, that if you abstained, it was a no, because the residents did not understand when we abstained that it was an actual yes. And it
You
was
just said something contrary to what
You said
written.
right,
An
exactly.
A no. This would be neither a yes
Correct.
nor a no.
And so, therefore, agreeing with Councilman Merritt, if we just took that off the table and it's neither, it's null, and we just make it where there's no abstention, leave the room.
Kevin, have there been incidents where more than one council member, not here, but elsewhere, have abstained from a meeting, from a vote? Right, where's Braden? He might.
I've honestly not sat in on one where I've had multiples. I've heard of it happening. Of course, I've also heard of council members just, majority of council members just walking out to bust quorum too, to avoid a vote on something. I've seen that happen. And so, but I've not, again, the other cities that I'm city attorney for require you to vote. So one of which is a 5-member, 6-member council with the mayor, configured just like y'all. So, I mean, it can't happen. Is what I'm saying.
I didn't mean to confuse the issue by bringing this up. I'm actually,
Oh,
I guess I
it's-
could accept it being a neither yes nor a no, and leave it at that. And then, again, I think the instances of that happening are probably very few. So maybe we are overthinking this in some regard, but I felt like it was an important point to make.
But it does present the very question you started with, and that's that if you're not absent and you're not voting, and there's one of the voting council members doesn't vote in that instance, yeah, it does set the potential for the mayor to be a tie-breaking vote in that instance, because otherwise it's not a yes or no. It effectively doesn't count either way, the way the charter would be written at that point.
Correct.
At the end of the day, I think we're clearing up what an abstention actually means. And obviously, we have it sort of convoluted at the moment before we make this amendment.
Yes.
And so therefore, this is an improvement. And it's still, if it remains as a tool, it remains as a tool, but we all have the responsibility of representing our constituents. And therefore, even if we do have, and you called it, Martin, 50-50, it's someday, my dad would say you have to pick a side. You just do, I think. And you have to live with that decision and have good rationale on why you're moving forward in that particular. You're not going to please everyone. We never will. But I'd be comfortable leaving it as it is. But I simply suggested, based on the conversation we were having, that if we simply remove it, we would then challenge our council today and in the future to vote on issues as they come before them. So
You good? You good with leaving it? Okay. Leave it as
So
stands here.
leaving it as
As
is,
it
and if it passes, then we can abstain, and it's neither a yes nor a
Correct.
I'll just add that I think it's a tool in cases where you're all for something except for part of that something that you're strongly against. And by being able to, you see both sides, and I understand you do have to choose at some time, but it can be a tool of, okay, well, I'm abstaining because of that, because I don't want to be able to, people to come back and say, well, you voted for this. Well, I didn't want to vote for that, but I was forced to vote, and being able to abstain can actually be I'm not going to say a weapon, but just a tool of how we get things done.
Well, we'll leave it as it is
Okay.
Proceed on, okay.
and move forward.
All right.
Okay, so section 3.01, the committee recommended to update language related to the time required for a new city manager to move to the city to be left up to the discretion of the council.
Anybody? Questions, comments? Everybody good?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, section 3.02, they recommended to remove the number of days for submitting the fiscal year end audit report to align with state law requirements. So basically, it was just saying whatever the state law requires is what we will do.
Well, and effectively, actually what it does is this is already covered in the finance sections of the charter. So it actually takes it out of the city manager responsibility section or duty section. It still has to be done, but the time on it is now relegated to the finance sections, which were also some later amendments being proposed. So not potential conflict.
All good? All good? Okay. Very good.
Okay. And then these are kind of grouped together, all of these sections in section 6. So it's basically just some cleanup items that the city attorney recommended. I have details about them if you would like them, but they're non-substantive. It shouldn't change any meaning of it. It's just cleaning it up.
And that's correct. It's largely getting rid of some unnecessary sections as well as condensing and simplifying some of the other, rather archaic language that's currently in the charter.
Okay.
No concern.
All good?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Number 7.
Okay, section 7.02. This will be to correct an erroneous reference related to municipal election. It just referenced the wrong section, so it's just correcting that. Section 703. This will be updating language regarding it's basically they had the petition form all listed out in all the different sections, and this is just changing it to say we're going to use the latest form from the Texas Secretary of State.
And again, what we're talking about here is the petition form for nomination that goes with your application for candidacy for city council.
Okay.
Okay. Section 7.06. This will be, they recommended updating the language as to what qualified voters can vote on. It just listed out the different types of items that they can vote on. Yeah.
No concern.
Any questions on that? Very good.
Okay. And section 9.20 recommended to review the city charter every 5 years beginning in 2028, appointing a committee no later than July 1st. This is just making a confirmed date. This is when it's going to be. Okay.
Good. Okay.
Okay. And if you have any additional amendments, if anybody has any suggestions on something that they would like to amend, feel free to discuss that.
Okay, so if anybody does think of something else, they can bring it forward at the next meeting, but everything has to be finalized by January 23rd.
Right.
Which is the next meeting.
That's January 23rd is the next meeting.
That's what?
Which is the next meeting.
Yeah.
The attorneys will be.
No.
It's the next. Which is the next regular meeting.
Don't we have
That's
to do a
correct.
second?
It is January 23rd.
We have a town hall.
Town hall.
Oh, that's right.
Strategic planning.
Yeah.
We have
Sorry.
a lot of,
Yeah.
we've
Thinking
got a lot
about something
going on.
else.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that'd be next
thinking
regular
about
meeting, which
something
something
else.
like this would be
Next
considered,
regular
yes.
meeting is
Yep,
January
yep.
23rd.
Okay.
The city attorney will be drafting the ballot language in January. That's why we're kind of pushing for this to be done today so that they have plenty of time because that process takes a lot of time.
So Kevin, do you think we would have by the January 23rd date, we would see a draft of the legal language by that time? I'm just,
Yeah, I mean, you've got, I mean, the memo that was presented back in November, I think this went to everybody.
correct.
That does show the actual amendments that would be proposed. But of course, we still have to do the proposition, and what she's talking about, we have to do the ballot language propositions. And that's a fine art because you're trying to condense this
Correct.
into something that's halfway readable, that still provides the, voters at least some content as to what it means, what is actually being voted on, and still comply with state law. So that,
I think that is a no.
no, it'll be done by the 23rd.
Okay,
We'll
well,
have
that's
it by the
good.
23rd.
All right.
It's,
You've answered the question.
yeah.
Let me ask Ben, so will we have maybe a button on homepage of the website so people can see proposed bond changes?
Yes, once we get everything finalized, we'll be over and above on the education and outreach to make sure everybody's aware.
Okay,
And this whole, in fact, these sections, as it appears here, and as will appear on the ordinance calling for the election, actually have to be published in their entirety, English and Spanish, in the newspaper twice prior to the election as well, in full. So that's part of the state law requirements for the election notice.
okay. Everybody good?
Questions?
Kevin, thank you.
Mayor and council, I appreciate you accommodating me. I now get to go to another council meeting site.
you go.
So
Got you out of here
thank
quick.
you so much.
Okay.
Braden will be here for the rest of the meeting. Sure, I'm it. You're it.
Okay. So next up is actual item A1, which is to discuss regular agenda items. Councilwoman Bennett.
I wanted to pull consent item.
Or- Okay,
Can we go ahead and do that real quickly?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. We can wait. Ben answered all my questions.
Okay. All right. Councilman Jackson?
Yeah, Mayor, I only have one item here, item H4, under the consent agenda regarding the purchase of the 3 new motorcycle units. I think this is an important decision for our city. And as we continue our focus toward improving public safety, and this is a big, in my mind, a big ticket. I'm supportive, but I would like to have a more healthy, more public discussion downstairs. If we could move that to the regular agenda. If anyone disagrees, agrees.
And that's fine.
You want to have more, a little more deeper discussion on
Just,
that?
yeah, just move H4 down to the regular agenda, right? So we can have more of a discussion around that.
Okay. So H4 would become J5.
Right.
Okay,
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
okay. Councilman Merritt?
Ben was kind enough earlier this week to have or actually late last week, to have an opportunity to go over. I don't have anything at this moment. I think item H4 does, on consent, does tie into our acquisition of the new control units as well, which is item J2. So there is a reference in J2 about the acquisition of the motorcycles. So we had that opportunity. I think the differential, and thank you, Ben, for reminding me, the the consent agenda dollar amount is 200,000.
Generally, so
So-
depending. So
Yes.
if it's something you've experienced before as a council and you've all had it before, and it's a higher amount and non-controversial, it's 200,000.
Right.
If it's something that may require more debate and discussion, even any dollar amount can be pulled to regular just to give it that opportunity. But generally, 200,000 is the line I apply with putting things on consent.
Very good. So thank you, Ben, for that clarity, and I think thank you for sharing that openly with the rest of the council and the community. I don't have anything else. Thank you very much. We'll hold the rest for regular session. Thank you.
All righty. Councilman Baird,
I'm good.
okay. So Councilman Roman is absent today, but he had some information that he wanted to discuss regarding items A3 and A4. And because a couple of the potential items that are being discussed as related to the bond relate specifically to his district, I think it's best that we make sure that we include them in this discussion. So I'd like to know if everybody would be available for a special call meeting next Tuesday. We could do it at 5 or 6. I don't think it would last that long, but it would be to discuss bond projects in the bond town hall.
That's good.
So tell me a time that works. If you want to do it at 6 to stay uniform, I think we could be out of here in an hour after having that discussion.
No concerns from here.
Okay. Good, good, good.
What time?
6?
That'll work.
All right. Then we will plan on Tuesday, at 6 p.m.
We'll
Okay.
post and be ready. We'll move with A3 and A4?
Yeah.
Excellent.
So let me just write it down before I forget. And again, I think we owe that to him, so that's fine. Next up is A2. Receive an update on the Builders of Hope Neighborhood Revitalization Program.
Good afternoon. So we've been talking about the Builders of Hope program in our target area for quite some time now. And we have good news. We have closed on 5 of the lots as of today with Builders of Hope, and their entire team is here. I'm going to start the presentation and they'll get up to talk about the last few slides. But I would like to introduce James Armstrong. There you go. He moved seats on me. It's like a trick. Okay. Okay, so James is in the back with Nancy Cardwell, and Nancy has been on our team helping with all the graphics and everything you see that makes it look readable and pretty and public facing. And then I see Jay, our architect over there, and he's got his whole team. So he's going to introduce his team in a minute when they get up. Okay, so we have closed on 5 lots. This is getting more real. So here you can see the location map. We have 2 on Greenhurst, 1 on Squire, Wissena, and Wicker. These are a few of the front elevations that Jay Taylor has made over there. Has a porch swing, if you'll notice, that I asked to be included. So we wanted full front porches. We want functional front porches. And what we are dealing with are inline lots that are all front entry. So that means you can't really have your wide front porch because you have to have a car that comes through with the driveway. This is not a back entry lot. None of them are. And so we had to get creative of how to build within the cost constraints that we have and how to provide the community that a front porch can bring when you want to sit outside on a nice day. Here are some of the questions that I've gotten over the years, and I'm sure y'all have too. So I put all of the questionable words at the top, and I've hoped to answer them, and then I can take questions in a minute. Why are we doing this and what are we doing? In 2017, residents voted to continue neighborhood revitalization, and part of that bond includes purchasing distressed properties. Of course, we did. We tore them down. And for this particular area, Farmers Branch, we found a partner. Where? Target area is a loose term that we've used. And here's a map of south of Valwood, east of B Street, west of Josie, north of Valley View. We have 17, now maybe 18 city-owned lots. The valuations are rising of the property. The valuations are rising of the current improvements in the area as well. So how do you keep people in their neighborhoods from being priced out, so to speak? That's what this program is about. When is this going to start? Well, Builders of Hope now owns 5 of the lots, and as soon as they get a permit, is if you ask them. So first quarter 2024 is the answer. January, they'll start pulling permits and breaking ground. Who can buy one of the houses? Qualified buyer. I'm going to have them come up and talk about what does a qualified buyer mean when you have a program. We use area media income, and I'll get to that in a future slide. But we use Dallas County AMI metrics. And how are we accomplishing this? How are we delivering these homes at these prices? How is this possible? Here are some of our partners. Builders of Hope is a community housing corporation. Dallas County provides grants. You have to be qualified, but they do provide grants. And the Muse Family Foundation is committed to these first 5 lots of $20,000 for a qualified buyer. And we'll go into that in a minute. And here are the program goals. So to review the goals, we want to provide sustainable housing, meaning it will last another 50 plus years, in our target area. It was an initiative from the 2017 bond, and it remains so. We want to make sure the housing, the footprint size does not exceed a certain square footage. And that is because Dallas County Appraisal District is the one that appraises your house. Some people call our office and they think that we place values on houses. We certainly do not. So Dallas County Appraisal District, we call them DCAD, they drive by and they see, oh, it's a new house, and they'll just look at the square footage and they'll place a value. So if you're building a 3,500 square foot house, new house, here's the value. It's just, an algorithm. So if you have a 1,700 square foot house, you're still going to place that value. You don't want to price people out of the neighborhood. So the 1-story product with functional front porch, we want to encourage people using their front porch, and we want to discourage higher property tax valuations for our new buyers in this particular program. We're providing single family homes for what we're defining as the workforce development demographic between 80 and 120% of area median income. And I know y'all are going to ask me, what is area median income? Dallas County is the one that provides this from HUD. So Dallas County comes up with AMI, and they use the term AMI. And if you look at, let's just say the 100% on the left, it depends how many people are in your house. So if you have 2 people in your house and you make 100% of area median income, it means you have 2 earners in your house, and together combined, they make $71,200. You could have 1 adult and 1 child in your house. So they look at this in multiple of ways. 100% of area median income for 4 people, that could be 2 adults and 2 kids. That's right in the middle of the graph. It's $89,000. So that could be 2 teachers, 2 earners with 2 kids. That would be considered a qualified buyer. So here's a sample on our left. One of the houses, for example, you see a sales price of $330,000, but that may actually not be the sales price that a buyer would be paying for this particular home. And why is that? Well, Builders of Hope has a relationship with the county, and they'll walk the qualified buyers through the county program. The county has their own metrics of qualifying for their grants, so they'll walk them through all the specific confidential information that they will need. The city will not see any of those details, and they may qualify for a $20,000 grant. Further, the Muse Family Foundation, one of their initiatives is to provide sustainable housing. And so they have committed to $20,000 as well for qualified buyers. So if an individual gets the $40,000 total, then their actual sales price would be $295,000 for that particular home. So that's where you may say, is this attainable prices? It is if you actually are a qualified buyer. Here are some of the prices and square footages of our first 5. Wasena, Greenhurst, Wicker, Squire Place. And this is, of course, is before the grant. Here's our marketing plan for the program. So this January, we are going to have a groundbreaking ceremony. We're going to have a tent, food, media, TV will probably show up. They have before. And we're going to just have an old-fashioned groundbreaking and take your picture and thank you for being there. And in February, we're going to share all of the details with the local real estate market. Builders of Hope, they have a website and they will do all of the intake, meaning they have an application on their website that will start in January and the public can fill it out. The city will not be qualifying buyers. We will not be picking people. We will not be looking at credit scores and personal information. We have nothing to do with that. We are simply the ones with the lots. And in spring, they'll be listed on MLS. If we do not have buyers in the local community that we're ready to go, we can list it on MLS is the source that gets it out to Realtor.com and Ebby Halliday and all of the websites that y'all are familiar with your apps. Speaking of the groundbreaking ceremony in January, Builders of Hope will be there. We have 2 banks involved. We have Simmons Bank and Benchmark Bank. We have the Muse family. They will be there. The goal is to make sure that we keep residents and buyers in the neighborhood that they want to be in and that they have been in. And I have a little background. I know y'all have read my packet, so I'm not going to read it to you, but that's just a little background of what's been going on. And these are some of the front, I know you've seen these, the elevations with the front porches. And again, we have budget constraints, but within the constraints, we feel like we have designed something that someone feels proud to live in and will take care of. I'd like to bring James Armstrong up now, unless y'all have questions for me before Builders of Hope.
Anybody have questions for Allison at this point? No? James?
You want to introduce your team? And
Well, first I want to thank Mayor Lynn and Council City Manager Williamson, City Council members Byrd, Burton, Jackson, and Merritt. I practiced that on the way here. For allowing us to come into your city to present what I think is a solution to what we all know is a crisis across every American city, right? And that's housing. How do we grow the tax base and in the same way make sure that housing is attainable for our workforce? And that's what this project is. It's not an affordable housing project. It's not a low-income project. It is a workforce housing development. My name is James Armstrong, President and CEO of Builders of Hope Community Development Corporation. We've been around for 25 years. I'm in my 6th year here at this organization. In the course of our history, we've built over 500 single-family homes, both infill lot development like the porches at Valwood Park and subdivisions. We are embarking on our first multifamily development in West Dallas here in the next couple of months. I want to introduce the team. I have Jay Taylor, who has been serving as the designer, project manager, Stephen Cato with Simone Construction. Mr. Cato has over, I'd say, 30 years of experience in 30 years of experience and being a general contractor. He is also Dallas County's preferred contractor when it comes to the demo rebuild project, which I think you all are exploring. The BOH team includes Christopher Lewis. He's our chief of real estate development, and Stephen Ross, who's our director of construction. And we're here to serve you all, to provide solutions to, again, problems that every city, and I'd say in America, is facing, is how can we provide housing in a way where people can live where they work. Happy to answer any questions.
Council, questions? Richard?
I have some if you want to go. It's fine.
I was just curious, this may be for both of you. It's the target demographic is actually in that neighborhood, how are you going to communicate very specifically to them? This is not a forum. That group is going to usually log on to hear and see this.
Well, we're going to communicate with the local realtors in the area, and I can access their data through MLS because I have access to MLS. So there's multiple ways that I can get that out, and we can put it on the city website for a time. And there is social media, so there's a couple ways that we can promote, that Builders of Hope will promote, and I can help with those
Okay.
lists.
Any
I'll-
chance of putting something physically in the mail?
Yeah, I'll also
Okay.
say,
Oh, yeah.
so before we go into a neighborhood and bring any development, we typically have at least 5 community meetings. That may be overboard for this project, but we'll work with Council Member Roman, and at least have at least 2 community meetings. Number one, to let them know what the program is, and secondly, to ensure that the design, I don't think Jay will redo his work, but we want to make sure the design aligns with neighborhood priorities. Now, what we did when we toured the neighborhood is we looked at existing housing stock, and if you can tell, it's just slightly updated from what's currently there. So we don't think we'll have a problem with neighbors pushing back on design. We were very thoughtful and strategic about that, but we'll have community meetings with the council member in his district to inform the residents of the program.
And signs in the yards. Councilmember, coming soon with the sign and the information so that the local community driving can see it
Right.
with the
But
rendering.
I guess my thought is, even if they see something that says coming soon, they're not necessarily going to do the research into what is coming soon,
Yes.
that it is for them
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah. And our marketing collateral, I don't have it today to share, but we have some that explain what qualified buyer is and go into some of the detail. But primarily, we want to drive people to the Builders of Hope website that they're building it right now, that talks about, hey, here's the form, fill the form out, step 1, 2, 3. So we're really trying to drive people to the website if you want to purchase a home here. And then that really walks you through it. And there's just going to have to be multiple ways that we do it.
Thank you.
Councilman Barrett? Richard?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. So my question is fairly similar to Council Member Bennett Burton's question is that a qualified buyer is set by criteria, financial criteria, income, right?
Right.
But does that also mean that that qualified buyer has to live in a certain area so that people in this neighborhood are given some kind of priority to buy a home in this neighborhood? What does that look like?
The priority would be access to the information early. That's to not violate any housing rules. And so we
Right.
are giving access to local realtors and neighborhoods early, and that would be the priority that you speak of. And so once we feel like enough people have learned about it for several months, then we can put it out on MLS. But we're not going to put it on MLS until we feel like the entire neighborhood has heard about it. So we're not in a rush.
So understand, so it does sound like there is the potential that this is a public meeting, so people are watching.
Yeah.
There is the potential that there are people outside of Farmers Branch that might be able to take advantage of this program and move here, right?
True. We cannot constrict who a buyer is. We cannot have a list of qualified
Mhm.
buyers based on where you live now. Just it would violate the fair housing law. But what we can do is give priority to the information to our residents, so that if they're in the position to be buying a home and looking for a home, then they're going to have the information first. And if you know about home sales, when you're looking for a home, you want that inside information of where the hot pocket is, or who's selling their house right now, or who down the street is selling their house, and you got the information first, and that's how you made the offer.
Right.
I can also mention, we don't necessarily have to advertise it on MLS. We don't advertise our products when we are operating in Dallas. And so there could be a way to give legacy residents a hand up, right? Without violating any fair housing laws. Now, when Allison, Nancy, and Chris, they brought this project to us, they were more so concerned about servicemen and women inside of Farmers Branch, our police officers, teachers, those that work at the local hospitals. And I will tell you, that is a priority for us. We have seen that neighborhoods thrive when legacy residents are able to purchase homes in their neighborhood. So
Right.
that is the focus of the program.
Right. And so I kind of came in a little bit of the middle of the conversation
Right.
here with the entire program. And so my understanding of this program was that police and fire and school teachers and, people that work here would be able to afford to live here.
That's right.
And throughout all of the marketing information on the Builders of Hope website and our meetings in the past, it's always been about gentrification and people, being able to stay in their neighborhoods and not get priced out. Allison, you just said it a moment ago.
Right.
The purpose of this program is to keep people from being priced out of their neighborhoods.
Right.
If we're going to make a product available to people that are
Mhm.
outside of Farmers Branch, then we're not really adhering to the core purpose of the program. And so I want to ensure that our marketing efforts are exhaustive in trying to keep Farmers Branch residents in Farmers Branch before we even think about expanding and going alternatively outside of that sphere.
Yes, and we're doing that with the priority marketing that you mentioned, and
Mhm.
it's the best thing that you can do is give your residents the inside information of these will be available and this is how you qualify, and giving them time to go through the process because it's not quick. When you're thinking about qualifying for a loan, you're thinking about those things and moving. It's not always quick, so we're not in a rush. We'll give them the time, and we are adhering to the beginning of the program because we could have just sold the lots and anybody could have built two-story houses years and years and years ago.
Mhm.
And that would have been a difficult thing for the neighbors and valuations. So we have been not in a rush to make sure that we're doing the right thing in this particular pocket.
Right.
Yeah. But
Okay.
thank you for letting me explain that. That is a key component of the marketing strategy.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilman Mayor?
James, thank you for the presentation. Thanks for your entire team being here. Could you elaborate a little bit? And I think it falls in the same line of opportunities for current residents to move into these type homes. Tell us, give us an example, if you will, how you've seen that work out in other projects that you've been involved in and your team's been involved in.
Yeah, so in our Revitalize West Dallas project, as you may not be aware, but West Dallas is a neighborhood that is going through what we call urban renewal or gentrification, neighborhood change. Land values are skyrocketing. As a result, home sale prices are through the roof and have now become unaffordable for legacy residents. With that project, we have specifically targeted residents who had either grew up in West Dallas or currently live in West Dallas and looking for new home ownership opportunities. And it just makes for a tighter community, right? When neighbors refer their child that may have went off to college and want to come back and live in their neighborhood. When the local teacher at the elementary school is able to buy a house, 2 blocks away from their home. It goes in favor of all community development practices and policies, is that when people are able to live where they work, when people are able to return back to the neighborhood where they grew up in, it makes for a tighter, more engaged neighborhood. And that eventually makes for a better city.
Sure. And so therefore, these opportunities, and Allison alluded to it, do take time because you guys have to build the product. The product has to be ready and folks have to go through the application and the programming, submittals that would rely on the grants to be afforded if that is something that they qualify for. You have situations then where you have residents who live there will move into your new product. Do you have a sense of what happens to the existing product that they lived in? Does it add itself to the inventory of availability, if you will? And help me understand and help others understand how that domino effect plays out.
Yeah, so I would assume that anyone who would move into our home, they are currently habitating in what we call naturally occurring affordable housing, right? So that's housing that may be 30 years old or plus, which most of the housing stock in this neighborhood, that now becomes an opportunity for someone of maybe a lower income to acquire that property. It could also qualify for the demo rehab build program, which I think you all are exploring. And so it is a domino effect of really increasing access to attainable housing, is what we call it.
Thank you for the feedback. No further questions.
Okay. James, thank you very much. I think it's really important that we get this program off the ground. It's been a long time coming. And so I'm really excited because it gives us the opportunity to work as a partner to reinvest in a neighborhood that needs reinvestment. And at the same time, there's a need to be sensitive to what is already there. So many people in neighborhoods all over the city, they're seeing homes getting torn down and I won't say McMansions because they're not all McMansions, but bigger homes are getting built. Everybody's fearful that that's just going to raise their property values and their taxes and whatnot. And that is not the goal of this program. But hopefully this program will serve as a catalyst to encourage others to maybe redevelop on their own or maybe in partnership with you directly. And so that's one of the things that I'm most anxious to see, hopefully, coming out of this program. So I just wanted to say thank you all. Thank you guys for your partnership in this. This is going to be exciting for our city.
Please give them a pat on the back. I asked if I could do all the designs, and they said yes before they really understood how involved I was going to be. And so poor Jay Taylor didn't make eye contact with me, but we're still friends. And I think the curb appeal was the most important to me because anybody can build a house very quickly, but getting the curb appeal right and the way it feels gives somebody confidence of where they live, no matter what they make. And that's all I have.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Allison.
Thank you.
So next up will be A5, discuss appointments to the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee and the Sustainability Committee. Thank you, Dan. Yes, sir.
Hey, Mayor, Council, it's me again, Erin Flores, Deputy Director of Administrative Services, Deputy City Secretary. And today we're just going to be talking about a couple of vacancies we have, one on the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee and one on the Sustainability Committee. You all were sent the applications for these individuals. And so you guys are free to discuss and let me know who you guys think would be a good replacement.
So, thank you, Aaron. Council, I guess as we talk about the animal shelter first, everybody on board with moving Becky Fisher, alternate 2 to the alternate 1 position? I assume that would be okay?
Yes.
Okay. And do you all have preference for who you would appoint to fill alternate 2?
And Mayor, I just wanted to point out Jennifer Scott is crossed out here because she withdrew her application.
Say that again?
I just wanted to point out that Jennifer Scott is crossed out here. She withdrew her application. So just letting you know.
We have 4 qualified individuals that want to participate, so I welcome the participation of any of the 4, just from my perspective.
As going through the applications, Mayor, I felt like Donna Manchester kind of stood out. She has, good business professional experience, but she also has a very high level of civic volunteerism. So she was one that stood out. Second one that stood out to me was Karen Denby, strong professional business experience.
Okay.
That's the only comments I'd make.
I agree with both of them. I would say Donna because she's District 3, but yes.
Well, y'all gonna have to make a decision. Or, excuse me, y'all gonna have to express a preference. I want to be very
District
careful
3.
about that. So,
I'm going to defer on this.
okay,
I'd say Donna has got at least two, and as I said before, any of the four would
Yeah.
certainly work. So,
Yeah.
if we're looking for a name, let's go with Donna Manchester.
okay. Everybody prefer Donna Manchester at this point? Okay. Sounds good.
Okay,
All right.
Donna Manchester. Okay, and then for the Sustainability Committee,
Again,
I'll throw out Ted Spradley.
okay.
Ted's been very visibly, actively involved with the Sustainability Committee, seems very committed and interested. Some good background as well. That's who I would prefer.
I've had several conversations with him over the summer also, and
Okay.
that's who I was going to suggest is Ted.
No qualms. Again, having participants is
That's a good thing.
a good thing to have. I'm fine with that.
Ted it is.
Okay. So our preferences are expressed for Donna Manchester and Ted Spradley. We will address that later.
okay, thank you so much.
All righty. Next up is discuss the composition and structure of boards and commissions.
It's me again. And I'm sorry, I don't think we have a presentation for this one. This is just a discussion for you all.
Okay. So let me just say, because I've had lots of opinions on this and I've thrown out opinions previous to this point. I had expressed earlier or at one time about sunsetting arts and culture and sunsetting that and then creating a sports, entertainment, and arts committee as one. I want to retract all of that. I've had a chance to think about that and discuss with others, and I do think it wouldn't be in our best interest to try to force arts people into a sports world, vice versa. So I would suggest leaving the Arts and Culture Committee as it is. I do think that will probably evolve at some point to the Arts and Multicultural Committee. That makes better sense for me, and I'm just expressing an opinion. And then separating the sports aspect from all of that into something else.
Having its own. Having our own or its own. A sports committee.
Yes, I'm still working on that because what I would like to bring to council at some point is an outline of what a sports committee, board, authority, whatever we want to call it, looks like. Because sports is a big driver of what we do, our economic success in this city. And so I'm trying to be very careful about how we go about that and what their working parameter is. So again, I was probably a little too premature in expressing my thoughts early on. And so I would just leave it at that. Anybody else have any other thoughts in regards to?
So if I understand correctly, we have some vacancies on the arts and culture. Is that correct?
We're still working on that one. So there was appointments needed. There were terms expiring. So if this is the direction council would like to go, what'll happen is at the next meeting,
Very
we'll
good.
bring it back for consideration
That's what I
because,
wanted-
yes.
That's what I wanted to get to. So I wanted to see how we were handling that, if this is the way that we're going to move forward. So we would then readjust and address that, as you just said, at the next meeting.
Yes, as presented. And then what I would do is sports board commission, however we want to call it, would become a future agenda item. As I look for feedback from you all as council members, is how you would like this agenda item to form and come together. But this would allow us to address the Art and Culture Committee, which had term expirations in June, May this year that are waiting for appointments. And so the city secretary's office would reaffirm where we're at and the options for those.
Fair enough. I'm comfortable with, and I appreciate the perspective, Mayor, that you've laid out, that, ideas come forward and we may not have, thought of all the parameters and the ramifications thereof. So therefore, that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And so therefore, going forward, it's imperative that we do have kind of that use case on what we want. The sports commission, sports board, whatever it may be called, what its goals are, and then we can discuss that. I'd also like to point out that I told Ben, and this is conversation between Ben and I, on this particular item, I found it a little disconcerting that there was a lack of actually what we were going to discuss on this particular topic. There was nothing really to study or prepare for, and so I would hope going forward that we would all, including city staff, make sure that we have a problem or an issue or something tangible that we would have the opportunity to look at, as well as I had several others ask what was going on with this particular topic. So I think it's important that we put some meat on the bone there.
Well, again, this was really a way for me
I
to say,
understand.
hey, I may have been premature in what I put out throughout there originally, had a chance to think about it, and I wanted to take a step back.
I understand.
So-
And I think what I'm asking is, I appreciate your perspective and where you're at. I think there's a combination of things going on here that in our study material that's going out to not only to us, but we know the residents and the community looks at that. There needs to be something tangible, if
Sure.
you will, on that. And so if you go back and look, there was very little on what that meant.
Yeah.
And we have so much going on, and as you've clarified it now, some of that's been retracted and we need to address what's going forward.
Yep.
So that's my hope, and I appreciate the perspectives. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor, I appreciate the path that we're taking now. I do think it's time that we look seriously at a sports-oriented board or commission. I guess, currently all the coordination and activity kind of falls by default to Parks and Rec a lot of times, because events, tourism, all that kind of just happens on their turf. But to maybe have some committee of oversight and to help us establish even further our relevance in this particular area, because for a long time, we've steadily been growing as a youth sports destination. And now we've made the national stage with pickleball, and we anticipate that will just simply continue to grow. And we had a national golf tournament here. So I think there's a lot to think. This is a good time for us to bring sort of some, I don't know what you call it, some coordination to that with an oversight committee that's specifically focused on sports entertainment.
Well, I don't want to beat this to death, but it's, we just had arguably the biggest thing that's ever happened to Farmers Branch take place here. And it is coming back next year. So I see an opportunity for us to create a niche. Everybody has to have a niche or a unique selling proposition. And some element of sports is is that for us? Because we had the pickleball. The next week we had a national juniors golf tournament. Following that, we had the Dallas Stars came and practiced here. Well, not enough people knew about that. There were people there, but the city didn't know about it. Following that, we had an Olympic skater come and practice and do an exhibition at the Stars Center. Our economy is going to move more because of sports, because of the new multi-sport complex that we have coming online. And so that's why I see the need to make this separate from all the other stuff. And that was my, maybe my mistake early on. And so I just wanted the opportunity to publicly say, hey, we're not going to do away with arts and culture. It's still very important to our city, but sports is also, but they're two different things. So I think enough said. Okay. Next up is discuss beautification easements and other encroachments. Item A8.
Good afternoon, Council. Sarah Bergman, lead planner. This presentation really includes 3 topics. They're each similar, but there are some key differences. So I'd like to go through each one individually and then pause for feedback and questions. The first topic is beautification easements, and these are easement areas on private property that the City of Farmers Branch has acquired over time, allowing the city to install and maintain landscaping on that private property. It's important to note that these easements provide the city with the option to install and maintain landscaping, but not the obligation. And so the majority of these easements are located in the Four Corners area, being the intersection of Josie and Valley View. And the general locations are shown on the screen here. At this time, the city is not maintaining any landscaping within this area. In 2000, 2 additional easements were acquired along Tomfield Road and Valley View Lane. And those were a little different. Those were beautification and sidewalk easements. And so in addition to landscaping improvements, those allowed the city to install public sidewalk within the easement areas. Here is an enlarged version of the Four Corners easements. Again, these are not the specific areas. They vary within these red shaded areas, but they're relatively small easements. Each one ranges from about 2 to 5 feet in width. And over time, these properties have developed with different patterns than the original easement shown. So some of these don't even include landscaping anymore. Again, this is the Tomfield Road easements. Those, similar to Four Corners, the city is not maintaining landscaping within these easements. There is a public sidewalk on both sides of the road that encroaches into the easement. And so staff has received a request from one of these property owners to abandon the easement on their property. And that brings us to the question of whether council would like to go ahead and consider easements on a case-by-case basis as property owners request abandonment, or because we've taken a holistic look at all of the easements in the city and recognize that, number one, they seem to be outdated. They don't necessarily align with all of the landscaped areas in the Four Corners. And number two, the city is not currently maintaining landscaping in those areas. And so we'd like some feedback from council regarding abandonment and the method for considering each easement. One thing real quick that I'd like to point out on the Tomfield Road easements, if the city were to move forward with abandoning these, we would encourage the sidewalk portion to be retained, given that there is sidewalk within the easements, but the beautification element of the easement could be released. So I'd like to pause there, see if there are any questions or any direction from council.
I'm going to recuse myself from this conversation. I'll be back.
Okay, you don't have to leave.
It's my property.
You can sit there quietly. Okay.
So Mayor and Council, I just want to give a little bit of insight into this one. This was a request from Councilwoman Burton originally. She's like, can we give back the easement so she can take over the maintenance of the landscaping? What I didn't want to do is have a one-off discussion about one small piece of property. So I asked the planning team, so credit to Sarah and her team. They researched all the easements, so we didn't have to repeat this conversation multiple times in the future to make it clear who owns what, who's responsible for what. But so council could consider these easements. The recommendation from staff is essentially identified the easements. We would like to move forward with letting these go. But again, that's going to take action of council. So we're getting your feedback on this. Again, a lot of this was done at a time when the future of the Four Corners Farmers Branch was unknown, and we wanted to have a little bit of control over what that looked and felt like. Now it's a new day, and these would just honestly get in the way of some discussions as property moves and things are happening. And so we're trying to take the city of being one less barrier for things to move forward naturally and organically. So that's where we're at on this piece of the conversation from a research perspective for you all to consider. But it does involve Councilwoman Burton's property as well.
So, Ben, would abandoning these easements affect us in any way if we needed to put up or erect new signage for something, or we wanted to put benches for pedestrian convenience?
Our ability to regulate traffic and other safety and traffic control measures shouldn't be affected. These are the beautification easements. Is that correct?
Yes.
So purely beautification.
Specific to the beautification.
So
These
it's
are
one of those, hey, it
specific
doesn't
to-
look right. City come in and put in new. No, we can hold the property owners to the standards of the property maintenance code.
Okay. So at the southwest corner of Valley View and Josie, for example, we would be able to hold the property owner to a higher landscaping standard, so to speak,
Right now, or
if we do this.
No. We have the ability to go in and maintain some beautification if we chose to do so, which we have not elected to do so. So all we're doing is abandoning something we've chosen not to do in that area. It
Okay,
doesn't affect any safety or any traffic control. We have now the right, if we decided we wanted to go plant flowers and stuff in these very specific easements, we could do that to make it more beautiful. We have chosen not to do that, and we're going to consider releasing the ability to do that in the future, but only for beautification purposes, not for releasing any other right that we may or may not have. And it doesn't give us any more rights either.
I also don't want to catch ourselves in the, well, it should look like this, and they come to the city and say, hey, you need to do this. This is your responsibility. Because then you end that back and forth. It's just saying, hey, you're the private property owners. You're responsible for the look and feel of your property according to the city's codes and any agreements you have. We're trying to remove us from that conversation where it's really the property owner.
okay. But we want,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
but we want to see in some of these areas neat and well-maintained landscaping that would fall on the property owner.
If we release the
Yeah.
easements, the responsibility to maintain the landscaping does fall on the property owner.
Yeah, and as a part of the process of saying we'll give up this easement, if we consider that, if the property owner considers that's a benefit, or they want it, then you can negotiate, well, we're gonna give it up, you put a tree there, something like that.
Understood. Okay.
We can actually make some sort of contractual arrangement to beautify it that way. But I would suggest this has very little negotiating value as it is today, because we're not using it. It's just harming people from beautifying their own property, essentially.
Correct.
Okay. And like the Brookhaven signs that are at Brookhaven Club and Marsh,
Yes.
who's going to take
You
it?
haven't gotten to that yet.
Oh,
Yeah, I kind of
okay.
wanted to
I'm
break
sorry.
that up because it's a
Jumping ahead.
slightly
Yeah,
different
she's-
issue.
Okay.
she's addressing them in three different
Sorry.
buckets.
But any other questions on easements? Is
Yeah,
council?
I do have a question. So to date, the property owners have been maintaining these areas because we've elected to not maintain it, even though we have the option to maintain it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so nothing really changes other than we remove ourselves from the option of us maintaining this if we wanted to make it prettier than it is. So nothing changes.
Right. We would draft a resolution that abandons all the previous easements, but nothing
Okay.
would change.
Okay.
Sarah,
Mhm.
you referenced in the other property graphic that the sidewalks will be retained as part of the easement. Is that same analogy or same operation apply to the four corners? Or is that a different? Do we not have sidewalks in those easements? Just clarifying the
Sure.
graphic, if you will.
Correct. Four corners, these are only beautification easements. They do not include sidewalk or any hardscape. These easements specifically call out sidewalk.
Fair enough. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah. I'm comfortable releasing the beautification easements. It makes perfect sense. And Brendan, gave us, we're not changing anything. We're not taking care of it right now. Going forward.
Well, I think we are doing some maintenance around Tina's. We were doing some maintenance around Tina. That's where some of the conversation is as well. And that one specific instance on Tom Field, I believe we did have some irrigation in there and some other elements as well. As a property owner, she's expressed a desire to do her own landscaping and maintenance. So that's kind of tough when you have city infrastructure intersecting with it as well. So we would clean up and pull away and let the property owners take over.
So you would, when you say clean up and pull away, would you remove the irrigation?
Let's see what we have in there, but yes, we would remove city infrastructure from it that's related to the beautification easement.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, that's connected to the city water supply.
Yeah, and
It's not
So it's-
connected to the meter of a business there. It's,
she's already requested that we do some of this, but I was like, I need formal council action to actually move forward with it because it's how it was existed. But yes, we've had some responsibilities there. And this came to the forefront when she was applying for her CO for her business there. Remember, it was like, hey, you have an easement, and staff were caught a little bit flat-footed on this one. So we never want to be caught flat-footed again. So part of that research was, let's go find them all just in case, so that in future discussions, we don't run into this again. But we'd talk to the property owners as well. We wouldn't just come by and dig anything out. We would work with them, not against them.
And facilitate transitional aspects as well to that. And I think that goes back to bargaining or leveraging or coming to an agreement, if you will, that has already been alluded to from the legal aspect. Okay.
So it sounds like we're at a good spot there.
Yes.
And then we need to bring Tina back for the next parts.
Okay.
We have also received a question. You're likely familiar with this monument at the intersection of Metro Boulevard and 635 Freeway. We've researched the history of this monument, who owns it, is there any agreement existing? And it was constructed in 1971 by the developer of the Metro Square office development to the north. At the time, they were installing this within city right-of-way and executed an encroachment agreement with the city outlining maintenance responsibilities, liability, those items for a 20-year period. That agreement expired, and there is no evidence that was ever renewed. And so at this point, there is a nearby property owner that is interested in taking over maintenance of the monument. In order to do so, the city would need to enter into a new encroachment agreement outlining those same responsibilities. Staff is supportive of this, and we were looking for direction from council on whether to move forward with drafting that agreement. You have to answer questions about this one.
So Sarah, the site's in a little bit of disrepair, right? The lights, everything, it just needs some update, upkeep, and maintenance. And it's one that's kind of been forgotten with time. So again, this was found meeting with a property owner. They said, who owns it? We're like, that's a great question. Let's go find out. As you can see, it's kind of in limbo, but they've expressed a desire to take over maintenance and make it part of their kind of entrance facade. So folks come in, it's not first thing you see is a disrepaired older monument entry sign as it would be.
And they're willing to take on that, as you've already alluded to.
Yes, maintenance.
so the city still owns this property.
Correct.
Nearby building owners simply saying, we'll take care of it and keep it updated, clean, and
Correct. The monument's fully within the right of way, but
Okay.
the maintenance for the structure itself
okay.
would be delegated.
I think we're good.
Seems straightforward.
It's a great opportunity for a partnership. Everybody wins. So
Yes, yes. Good job. Good job.
All right, and the last question was regarding the Brookhaven subdivision signs that are located at the intersection of Brookhaven Club and Marsh Lane. And these are a little bit more complex. There's one sign on either side of the intersection. The sign at the northwest corner is actually located fully within the city's right of way. You can see on the diagram here, the red is the private property line and the blue is where the sign is located. The sign on the southwest corner is located primarily on private property with a small portion extending into the right of way. And at this time, the city is maintaining both signs, the landscaping around that. And so we just wanted to come forward with that information, see if there are any questions, and ask if you'd like staff to start any conversations with the private property owner with Brookhaven neighborhood regarding maintenance of the signs.
Well, the sign to the north, we maintain that easement all the way up to Pebble Beach, I think.
Yes, I think a large area of right of way was dedicated, including that sign.
Tanglewood. Yeah.
Yes. That area is within the right of way, so the city does maintain.
So if we abandon it, who's going to take care of it?
And that is kind of why I wanted to break this part away from beautification easements, because in this situation, there is no easement to abandon. It is fully within the right of way. The only change would be if there was a private entity or a nearby property owner willing to take over maintenance. At this point, we're not aware of any that are willing to take over maintenance, but the sign on the southwest corner is located primarily on private property. So
And do you think that they will take care of it?
that is the
I
question for
just don't think
council.
that that's going to happen.
We have been maintaining it until this point, and we're able to continue maintaining it. We just were seeking direction
Well-
from council if that's something we'd like to continue.
That sign on the south corner,
Mhm.
that sign was there for a long time, and that was an empty lot for many,
Yes.
many years.
Yes, until about
Many years.
2012, I think, is when the house was constructed.
Okay. So those people probably, they may or may not even be aware that their property goes that far.
Right.
I would guess that they're not, because we take care of that area going down towards the creek. So are we stirring up a hornet's nest with two residents?
It's a great question. We're wanting feedback on whether the city should continue to maintain. We've been doing it this far, and we can continue.
Ben, what do you think?
There's basically a couple options. So there's an active homeowners group in that area, regardless of a formal association or not, that actively meets. And we do have the neighborhood partnership program. So we have a mechanism to where we could fund it to get this lifted off the ground to a level that the homeowners are comfortable with. The challenge we have is we have signs living in two different worlds right now. One is in our right of way. The other one's going to be considerably on private property, which, in all fairness, if we're going on it and maintaining it, we're going onto private property, which is not. So we need to formalize either we have access on private property to maintain the sign on the southwest side, or we can also approach that area because they've expressed a desire to have it at a higher level than it is and maybe clean differently. So if there's that opportunity as well, we could present the option and say, if y'all are willing to take it on, we can work through this program to give it a lift, to get it started for that next step, or we can work with the homeowner on the southwest side to get access appropriately to maintain it. But we don't want it to live in limbo any longer, because that's one of those conversations. It's whose sign is it? And you can see that it's complex. That's why the planning team went out there and researched it. It can be difficult to figure out where things are and who.
What if we just annex the property?
Well, we would get a right of access.
No, that's,
We-
I'm asking a serious question.
Annex,
Who originally
We
put
could
up the
acquire
signs?
right of way around
Right
that
of way,
sign
yes.
if we needed to, or an easement
Okay.
allowing us to
Club?
access the
It's
property.
the Board of Governors. So the question, the Board of Governors of Brookhaven approached me about making sure that the signs are clean in order to prepare for the pickleball tournament. So that brought the conversation together. And then we unearthed, if you will, all of this, where these things sit.
Were they there
so
since what, the
It seems
50s
to
or
me,
early
it
60s?
seems to me that the possibility of getting them back to having Brookhaven as the club and the board of governors of the club would be able to take this. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's the neighborhood partnership that you were referring to.
Well, that can be any neighborhood grouping that comes together. They just need to say, but basically what happens when you have the neighborhood partnership program, you want to have something that the whole neighborhood supports, and it's not something that's a special interest of a small group of individuals. And so,
Correct.
yes.
I mean, you would have an overlapping, from the board of the club as well as all the residents. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here.
I mean,
going forward.
legally, is the sign on the south side owned by the resident because it's on their property,
The
Yes.
majority of it, yes.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It
So,
looks like
We certainly don't want to
90%.
do anything that would annoy them and then they tear it down. I mean, nobody wants the sign torn down, I don't think. I know that's, I'm just, again, I'm thinking way out of bounds, just.
Well, they could put a fence up around it because, it's on their property and that would be odd, but I would think that a neighborhood group would be interested in taking over control of it in whatever legal way that's done, so that they can beautify it. And I think that makes the most sense. I don't think it makes sense for the city to be maintaining it, even though it's in a right of way. It is a marker for a neighborhood of private homeowners and private property. So,
Here's a thought. Is there a way to move it forward towards off of their property or right on the line as I look at everything else that is mapped out there?
We
I
could
don't know.
look at
Just
that
curious.
option. There are some utility, traffic signal boxes and other utilities in this area, so we'd have to look into that, but we could certainly consider that.
Could they not? Ben, could they not just do this? And carve that out. I mean, there'd be an adjustment on their property line. But if they don't want that, then this
They
gets
have it
deeded.
given to the city.
Yeah.
So absolutely. So it sounds like from the council perspective, there's an interest in clearing up ownership of this and comfort with approaching groups over there to whether to see if there's an interest in them owning it or us owning it, but just one way or the other, clear ownership of these signs with one group, whether it's the city or the homeowners of the area there. But otherwise, we're kind of stuck in that limbo because even when cleaning the signs, when we got that request, we researched it and it was tough because of the material. We can't power wash it essentially. So it was something that was tougher to do. But the homeowners seem like they're interested in that conversation as well. So if y'all are comfortable with it, we don't want to stay in limbo is what it sounds like. We want to find a permanent solution for this, and we'll bring back some solutions for council consideration. We'll reach out where we can and see what the pulse is. But council is comfortable if it comes completely to city ownership, also comfortable if it belongs to the group of homes as it would be to where it still looks nice for the neighborhood entryway.
Yep.
Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Fair assessment. Perfect. So 3 interesting topics, all different, but cleaning up information's been out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Well done.
Next up is A9, discuss a potential comprehensive zoning ordinance amendment related to food trucks. I do have opinions on this first. So everybody stare at her.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Lily Sutton. I'm a planner with the city. Let me put it in the slideshow function first. And today we're going to be discussing food trucks. There was recently a change at the state level, and that altered how the city can regulate food trucks and mobile food units. That change was House Bill 2878. This took effect at the beginning of September, and this basically changed the requirements for health permitting and inspections from the municipalities to the counties. And the affected counties are Dallas and Tarrant County. You might remember in October of this year, Chapter 26 was amended to comply with these regulations. With this compliance, there's a gap in the regulations surrounding food trucks. Because of that, in the House Bill 2878 allows for municipalities to still regulate zoning and fire requirements. So that's why we're approaching this from a zoning and planning side. We did put together a proposal of some examples of what those regulations might look like, and we took those to our Planning and Zoning Commission. It was met with a seeming general positive reaction to food trucks. And obviously, we're having this discussion tonight, and based on that feedback, we're hoping to get the ordinance to both P&Z and Council in early 2024. So we did look into several other municipalities to see what kind of their zoning looked like in relation to food trucks. We thought Carrollton and Allen were a great juxtaposition between the levels of strictness that you can have related to mobile food units. Carrollton, as you can see, is stricter on the actual zoning districts that they're allowed in. They're allowed in less districts, but the additional requirements they have to meet could be considered less restrictive. Whereas in Allen, they're allowed in a wider range of districts, but they're very specific on the additional requirements within each of those districts themselves. So it kind of shows the different elements that you can be more or less restrictive. So in terms of what we are proposing for discussion, we are proposing to allow food trucks in the entertainment overlay district. This is a good fitting district, in our opinion. It has a lot of the necessary resources for food trucks to be successful, parking surfaces and things of that nature. And it aligns with our vision of the East Side. For additional requirements, we would require that they would meet parking regulations, meaning that they couldn't cause safety hazards, as well as they would still have to meet their parking space minimum. So if there was a business that wanted a food truck and they're required to have 20 spaces and that food truck would take up 2, they would be required to have 22. So they're not taking up parking spaces for patrons. They also must be an accessory to a primary use. So they couldn't be located on a vacant lot or a lot that did not have a valid CO. And they must provide an agreement including access to restrooms so their patrons could use the restrooms of that business located on that property. They also must provide trash containers as well as meeting all the requirements labeled by the county for the health permit. And then they would also be required to meet all of the fire permitting. And then we did come up with exceptions because obviously we love food trucks at our events. So that would be one of the exceptions, would be food trucks at city-sponsored events. So think the Bluegrass Festival, Didn't Drive Live. Our Parks Department already has their system and standards in place for food trucks at these events. To not conflict with that, we're listing it as an exception, as well as with temporary or special events. Think of like the pickleball tournament that are not necessarily city-sponsored events. Those would go through our fire department as well as they have certain permitting and standards that they set for food trucks as well. And then the last exception would be our private events. So that would be events on residential property for invitation only, birthday parties, graduations, things like that. That is not something that our health department permitted or inspected before this state and House bill change, and so it's an exception that we have listed now. And we did set up a communication plan, including social media posts, notifying about the change, updating the planning department's webpage, and creating a physical flyer for in-person inquiries. So a lot of times people will call our health department or other departments to see if food trucks are allowed, and then this way they would have an avenue both digitally and physically to guide them to the right resource. And with that, I will open it up to any questions.
This was Lily's first presentation. to
If it
council.
wasn't
Very
obvious.
Good, very good. Anybody have any questions, comments? Councilman Merritt?
Lily, thank you. Can we go back to the exceptions for a moment?
Absolutely.
So we address special events permitted through the fire. Does that include special events from a business perspective? I see what we have our own pickleball tournament, which is a private business, if you will, on Brookhaven Club. Are businesses in that special events category, or do they fall into the private events as well? So if I'm Acme Incorporated and I want to bring a food truck in on my lot, how do I fit into this use case?
It would be through a temporary event through the fire department if it's not a city-sponsored event. Thank you. I think Shane Davis might want to say something.
Councilman, it depends on who they're selling to. If you're just selling to your own employees, it's a private event. If your intent is to bring people in off the street, then it becomes to sell to the public, and that kind of would change the mindset. So it depends on your audience you're trying to.
Yeah, not to put anyone on the spot, but we know that there are certain food trucks who advertise and land on specific business law. How does that use case work, if you will, under what you've proposed if they're outside the entertainment area?
So that's the challenge. The state law didn't give us any regulatory ability from the health side. They took that away for the way they carved out the counties, turned to Dallas and Tarrant County. So we had no ability to regulate, other than the fact just to see, do you have a Dallas County health permit? So that kind of leaves it, left our state kind of fair game all the way across the board. So planning kind of took the ball and like, sorry, what can we do? Maybe that's not what we want as a city. They identified, we thought we'd like it as a city. And also particular events for parks and things of that nature.
Right.
So basically everywhere else, it's not in these particular areas, unless it's a private event, they're not allowed.
Not allowed. Okay.
Unless it's a special event, but I mean, we're pretty clear in terms of making carve-outs.
Councilman Merrick, Tim Didier, Assistant Chief Fire Marshal. All food trucks in the city have to go get an operational permit from the fire department to operate, regardless of what type of event we have. So we make sure that they have the proper ventilation, the proper suppression for those trucks.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's, again, we see this quite often in our city operations. We have overlapping, intersections of, a food truck would have to come you've already said, through the fire department, would also have to come through, wherever it be, through sustainability, through the health aspect, now through planning to understand the intersections here. So I think it's just important, and you've heard me say this from this seat before, understanding those use cases on how this plays out, what happens in this particular situation or some future situation that we could pontificate on. So thank you for the clarification, both of you. Appreciate it. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good at the moment. I'd like to see perhaps our area expanded perhaps to other potential areas. I think there's some consideration, and we could get into a rabbit's hole there, but I'd like to see more of the city potentially opened up for that. Not necessarily, want to be clear, all of the city, and I think you've talked about that already.
So my question, I guess, is more for Shane at this point, only because at the pickleball tournament, the food trucks had to leave each night. Okay, that created a problem logistically for them, for the tournament folks, whatnot. Is there any way that we can get a workaround from the county so they don't have to do that next time?
It's required by the food code. Liz, I'll let you give the specific language.
Hello, Liz Arts, health manager. So the food code requires that your trucks go back to their commissaries to dump their gray water, which is their wastewater. And that's the reason why they can't stay overnight, because they're washing their hands, they're washing utensils. So they're collecting a lot of wastewater. So they have to dump it, and they can't dump it in the street. So that's why they have to return back to their commissary to do that, or prepping food, etc.
Okay, then to that question and that explanation, is there a way for us to provide that commissary or that place to dump their water so they don't have to move?
We don't have a commissary.
Well, that was, so the state, so I think we kind of skipped over a piece here. The state law changed.
Correct.
the regulation of these food trucks from municipalities to the counties. And the county is the only designated, they have to do this all at a county commissary,
Yeah.
right?
No. So there's different commissaries located in, different cities. I don't believe we have one in the city of Farmers Branch. So commissaries are where trucks go to prepare their food, store their food, purchase food, wash their vehicles, dump their waste, park their vehicles, because you can't park a mobile food truck, at a residential property. So that's where they park their vehicles most of the time.
Where is the nearest commissary to Farmers Branch?
I'm not 100% sure. They're in Dallas, in the Dallas area. I don't have exact address, but I can certainly get those to you.
Okay.
Jawaria Tareen, although I'm in a different position, but I do have credential to respond to that question. State does allow cities in our code, if any restaurant allows the food trucks to use their commissary in terms of their kitchen to prep, but that's a discussion between the food truck owner and the restaurant. But at the same time, we do have certain kitchens like Towerwood. It is on Towerwood, and I forgot the name of the restaurant. But they do provide kitchens. You can rent kitchens over there. You can do that, but it's between the food trucks, and they can approach them. They can get those inspections done, and they can use the kitchens over there. But it's really between both of them.
So Brookhaven has a restaurant. So it could be between Brookhaven.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
If the kitchen allows you to use their kitchen to prep food, to dispose of their waste, and anything like that, they can do that. The code does allow that.
There you go.
Determine us where the sewer connection is, your biggest thing, so.
This may be one of it might be one of the items that comes up tomorrow at our meeting. And so I'm just trying to think ahead, because it was problematic for them this past year. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see, and then we'll let you all handle it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any questions for Lily?
Could I get a point of clarification, Councilman Merritt, on expanding the range? What kind of feedback can I give to the planning team so they know what you're looking for in expanding the range? Is there an appetite from the rest of the council members to change this range? Because it seems kind of open right now. So
Sure.
what are we looking
Sure.
at?
And I didn't necessarily want to go down that path because I was hoping that others might weigh in on that they thought it could be broader. I would think that we'd have potentially the Four Corners area. Obviously, we have much growth on the west side. I think they'd be interested in. So again, I think those are just two that I'd throw out there in addition to what you put in the entertainment district. But I think we might want to look at that more holistically, and I'd look to my peers across the table for their thoughts as well.
Lily, is this something we can modify more than once if we enact this change, the location? I'm assuming we can change the geographic boundaries for the food trucks beyond the entertainment overlay district as well in the future, correct?
Yes, sir.
The reason I'm asking is to move quickly on consideration is because state law did change, so I'm
Sure.
administratively relieving because we don't have.
What you
we're-
just asked for makes sense to me, so I think it's a start.
Okay.
And therefore, if we look at it, I'm hearing that as a group, we'd look at it knowing that we might look at broadening that going forward. I hear your ask very clearly. And so I don't want us to simply pinhole ourselves only to the entertainment district and call this issue closed. I think we need to look at how this will play out going forward, because I'm not sure that we've grasped all of the use cases here. But that would be, I hear what you're asking, and I'm comfortable moving forward with the caveat that we'll look at additional areas going forward.
Could we go ahead and add Mustang Station to it now? Just, if they ever wanted to do a food truck festival or something?
Okay.
Is
I should
that
definitely look into that.
like one of the areas? I think Four Corners might
Four
be.
Corners.
Yeah,
Four Corners.
but if we craft an ordinance and then we have addendums to it, we can do whatever we want in that regard. Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But again, to your point, it's already been made here, special events that we're hosting, put on by the parks, other special event, the exceptions here. I just have to get our, heads around that particular.
Sure.
Going
Good.
forward.
Absolutely. We'll start the conversation. Well, we could always circle back to it, but I'm just looking to get something on the books that gives clarity to staff. Perfect.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is A10, discuss future agenda items. We'll go around the table. Councilman Merritt?
I would like to propose a discussion on, it probably will fall into our January, February discussion of strategy, but on the comprehensive plan, there were a number of different objectives, and we recently approved the new comprehensive plan. I'd like to see what our strategies are going forward on that and have an open discussion about those. And I think we mentioned it before with, I think, some odd 10 to 20 different objectives. We can't do all of them at once. We need to prioritize accordingly.
Okay.
And I'd like to make sure that we have that discussion.
Very good. What else?
That's all.
Okay. Councilman Jackson?
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
Councilman Baird?
Nothing at this time.
Councilman Burton?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm going to attempt to start executive session. Okay. So let me just read into executive session. I'm going to read all three and we'll go from there. Council may convene into closed executive session pursuant to section 551.087 of the Texas Government Code to discuss economic development incentives for Project Field. Council may convene into closed executive session pursuant to section 551.072 of the Texas Government Code to discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, or sale of real property located south of Valley View Lane, east of Webb Chapel Road, north of Interstate Highway 635, and west of Marsh Lane. And council may convene into closed executive session pursuant to section 551.076 of the Texas Government Code to deliberate the deployment or specific occasions for implementation of security personnel or devices in relation to building safety, emergency hazards, and security during council meetings.
It doesn't matter. We'll have plenty of time.
Yeah,
we can.
Okay. Okay, so why don't we take 5 minutes, get food,